Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Kyra, and here on my channel we're all about real makeup for real life and real people like us. Today's video, as you would have seen from the title, is ranking my powder blushes, and this is the first video I'm filming since changing up my background. I do think I need to mess with the lighting a little bit, so hopefully you'll forgive that for today. But I'm really excited to go ahead and rank my powder blushes. I do have my #1 blush on currently, and I don't have highlighter on. I wonder if any of you will know what that blush is. Leave your guesses down in the comments if you want to play along. And before we get into the ranking, I just want to say, if you are new here, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here today. I hope you'll subscribe if you like what you see, and then you'll be able to find my videos more easily on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday when I upload. And with all that said, let's get into it. I do have an astonishing 29 single powder blushes to rank today, so this is going to be a long one. Number 29 is this Kiko Green Me blush in the shade Soft Mauve. This is a really pretty blush. I just don't use it a whole ton, partially because it's a little bit more cool tone, and cool tones don't always pull off very well on my very warm skin. So that's why this one falls where it does. It also has kind of a weird scent to it, which is interesting, but it is a pretty blush. I only keep things that I like and that I feel like I will use. So here is number 29. Next is a blush that I did receive in some friend mail recently from my girl Angela, and it is the Pixie Fresh Face blush in the shade Beach Rose. Oh, there went the lid. I have had this blush before and I decluttered it. I do really like this shade, however. You know, it just falls where it does because of the other blush that I'm ranking today. But it is a really nice neutral blush. This would be a great everyday blush that would go with most looks that you might create if you're just an everyday makeup wearer like myself and like a lot of us. So this one does fall at number 28, but it's still really nice. The formula is smooth, everything like that. Number 27 is one of two in this line. It is Milani Powder Blush in the shade Tea Rose. I do have one other shade that falls a little bit further up. This is a pretty shade, as you can see right here. Very light, very peachy. I do like this formula. It's kind of soft, very smooth, very blendable, very user-friendly. I just haven't had this one for super long, and it does compete with other similar shades like this in my collection, which is why it falls at number 27. And speaking of the Milani Powder Blush, number 26 is the shade Romantic Rose. Again, really love this. Formula is great, pretty shade, neutral, wearable, but I do have other shades in my collection similar to this in formulas that I prefer. For number 25, for a while I've kind of felt like maybe I was crazy because so many people have raved about these blush duos, and it's 100% the hype that caused me to purchase this, and now I kind of wish that I hadn't. And it is the Cover FX Monochromatic Blush Duo in the shade Warm Honey. I do really like this shade. The shimmer side does seem to add texture to my skin, and that's part of why I don't use this very often. It's also pretty dark, and so I have to be very light-handed with it, but it is pretty, you know, and it is versatile, which is part of why I was interested in, you know, from the get-go. There are the shades. The shades are really pretty. I like the idea always of a blush duo where you can use them separately or you can use them together. However, I think the shimmer shade is just too shimmery to wear by itself, so that takes away some of the versatility. And again, I have to be very careful, otherwise it does accentuate texture on my skin. I do like it, however, and it was very expensive, so I'm kind of like forcing myself to make use out of it a little bit. Number 24 is another type of blush that I have multiple shades, and this one is in my Shop My Stash this month. And it is the Clinique Cheek Pop in the shade Melon Pop. This is a really pretty peachy shade. It's very melon-like, however, it's a little light, and it comes off pretty pinky on me, and so that's why the shade falls where it does. I love the formula of these cheek pops, and you'll see the other shade quite a ways up on the ranking. But it's pretty. I think it's gonna be pretty for spring, and that's why I put it in my Shop My Stash for this month. Again, another product that I have multiple shades is the E.L.F. Primer Infused Blushes, and coming in at number 23 is the shade Always Rosy. Such a pretty shade. I love blush, you guys. That's why I have an atrocious amount, and I wish I could wear them all every day, but it's why I'm always glad for Shop My Stash and other like project panning projects, things like that. But it's a really pretty shade. Again, it's just a shade that I have, you know, throughout my collection, especially in palettes and things like that, so I don't always reach for this one, but I love how smooth this formula is, and it is definitely long lasting, being part of the primer infused line. So I do really like that one. Well, I do have quads and other palettes that have all blush in them, but I decided other than duos, I would rank the rest of them as face palettes. So you'll see that ranking coming up, you know, further down the road. But this duo coming in at number 22, yes, is the Jouer Rose Gold Blush Duo. There are two shades in here, Marigold and Rose Petal. Marigold, Rose Petal. The reason this one falls where it does is I get the impression that this is not the same formula as what they put out in their full-size blush duos, and you know, I kind of was hoping that it would be. The shades are pretty, but I just get the feeling that the formula is not the same. When I see people use the full-size duos, you can tell by the texture of the duo, or like by looking at the surface of the blushes, what the texture is like a little bit, especially if you've tried a lot of blush, which I have. And this shade right here is almost like crumbly. This one works fine and everything, although they do need to be built up. I do like this duo. I was just a little bit disappointed in the quality of this. Thought that I was going to get a great deal in a mini duo just to try out the formula, and I just have a feeling that, you know, that didn't happen. Somehow I don't seem to have a number 21 here. Holy crap. I am just off. Okay, so we're gonna just, you know, they're still going to be in ranking order. The numbers just might not line up. Coming in at number 20. I don't know how that happened. Darn it. It's really hard, especially when you have a lot, because I write them all down and then I work on ranking them. So, any hoozle. Number 20 is the Kiko Milano Tuscan Sunshine Blush in this shade Tuscan Iris. Again, the original scent has kind of faded to kind of a funky scent like the other Kiko blush that I talked about in last place, but this one is really beautiful. I love this ombre. Again, I'm a sucker for like a duo or something like that where you can kind of customize your shade or make it more versatile. I personally just mix this one together, and I do feel like it's kind of a unique shade to my collection. It's a little bit more of like a yellowy peach shade, and it's a nice formula. It's beautiful embossing here. And you know, I'm not mad about it. I do like this blush. Coming in at number 19 is the other E.L.F. Primer Infused Blush. This is a Primer Infused Shimmer Blush. I just got this pretty recently in an E.L.F. haul that I did, and I did do a full face of E.L.F., including I used this blush, so I'll link that for you in case you missed it. But this does have a beautiful texture, a little bit more kick up in the pan, I would say, than the matte primer infused blushes, but it is so worth it because this shade is gorgeous. Again, another perfect neutral shade for an everyday wearer. If you don't want a lot of selection of blush, this is going to pair with a ton of looks if you are interested in this blush. So I do really love these. I just think these primer infused blushes are so nice. I do like the bronzer as well. I would really love for them to come out with a highlighter in this formula. E.L.F, I'm talking to you. Number 18 is my Essence Satin Touch blush in the shade Satin Love. Another great staple sort of neutral blush color. And I do like this blush a lot. Again, this is another beautiful neutral blush that would be great for everyday wear if somebody just wanted, you know, one blush or just a couple blush. It's definitely warm toned, but I do think Satin Touch is such a perfect name for this because it is very soft, it is satiny, so it has kind of a luminosity to the blush without being shimmery in any way, shape, or form. And I feel like the E.L.F one that I just showed you is also that way. It's more of a satin, so there's not any texture that gets accentuated on my cheeks. And this builds up very quickly. Unfortunately, this one has been discontinued. You know, Essence does tend to do that with their blush every so often, but I've never heard anybody say that they didn't like one of the Essence blushes. And then coming in at number 17 is my other Essence blush. It is the blush in the shade Befitting. And I haven't gotten to use this one as much as I would like, but it is a beautiful shade. It's the top one here. It's a little bit more rosy than Satin Love. And this one is matte. The satin one, like I said, is like a satin finish. It does have a glow to it. This one is matte, but it is beautiful on the cheeks. If I had to compare these two Essence blush textures to something else or something high-end or even luxury in my collection, I think the texture of these is super similar to the Hourglass blushes, except you don't have to build these up as much as you would certain Hourglass blushes, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But these are really nice, super inexpensive. I think they're like $3. Coming in at number 16 is another blush duo. This is the Natasha Denona Mini Blush and Glow Duo. So that's what this looks like. I actually bought this because of my girl Angela, and usually I'm the one that makes her buy stuff. Not makes her, but you know what I mean, causes her to buy stuff. But Angela caused me to buy this because it looks freaking phenomenal on her. I do really like this duo. I think it's going to be a beautiful option for spring and summer. The shades are just so smooth and glowy. I really like this little duo, and it's one that I don't reach for often enough. I think I did get it toward the end of the year in 2020. And so it really wasn't anything that was like seasonally appropriate in my mind, wherever you want, whenever you want. But for me, this is definitely more of a spring shade. So I'm definitely going to get some use out of that this spring. Coming in at number 15 is another product in my Shop My Stash for the month, and it is my Nabla Skin Glazing Glass Skin Finish Glow Powder in the shade Lola. And isn't she pretty? The only downside to this one is that it definitely seems to emphasize texture on my skin. I wore this one yesterday. I felt like this, okay, this is the same formula. It's in the same line as their highlighters. This is really, I think, meant to be a highlighter for a very beautiful, deep, rich skin tone, and I think it would be stunning. I personally felt like I could pull it off as a blush, and it's odd to me because this emphasizes texture on my skin, but the highlighter I have in the shade Privilege, I don't feel that way about it. So I'm not for sure what it is with this one, and I really am going to continue working with this, but it just may be that I don't build this up quite as much so that it doesn't emphasize my texture, but I love a blushy look. So what I would probably end up doing would be to put a liquid or a cream blush on as a base and then put a little bit of this over the top. But either way it goes, it is a beautiful blush and a beautiful coral shade. Coming in at number 14 is one of my MAC blushes. It's the MAC Sheer Tone Blush in the shade Blush Baby. This is so nice. This is one of those that sort of competes with the E.L.F. primer infused blush. I mean, you can see that this one's a little lighter and maybe ever so slightly cooler, but these are super similar and I tend to reach for this one. I don't know why, probably because MAC is not cheap and I want to feel like I get my money's worth out of products that I invest more money into. But it's beautiful, it's nice, it's smooth, but again, it is so similar to those E.L.F. primer infused blushes in terms of how smooth it is, blendable, buildable, user-friendly, etc., etc. I do really love this shade, however, and I do recommend it. This one really pains me to put it down where I am. I mean, it's coming in at number 13, but I have a lot of blush. And I just don't think partially that I've had enough time to work with this one. Need to roll it in, story of my life, to a Shop My Stash pretty soon. But this is the Ofra by Samantha March Chick Lit Blush Duo. Very pretty. Again, sucker for a blush duo that, you know, you can kind of make versatile. Another downside, however, that you probably would have heard me talk about in my bronzer ranking is that this one is extremely powdery. And I don't know why the bronzer and blush are that way, because I don't feel like the highlighter is that way whatsoever, but it is very messy. But this is like the Pinky Peachy shade by itself. This is the glowy blush by itself, and this is them mixed together. So hopefully you can see. It's beautiful. But like the bronzer, I don't know, I'm not hardcore against messy makeup, but I am a little bit. And especially when I'm in a hurry, I don't like to reach for something like this that's a little bit more finicky. I don't know if all Ofra blushes and bronzers are like this. I just know that the highlighter isn't. So that's why it falls where it does. Coming in at number 12 is from the drugstore. It's the NYX Sweet Cheeks Glow Blush in the shade Citrine Rose. This is kind of everything I really hoped that Nabla one would be. Obviously this shade is different, but while this is extremely, I mean, shimmery, almost to the point of being metallic, it lays down on the skin beautifully. I definitely recommend these blushes. They look really scary and pigmented, but if you use a nice fluffy blush brush or even something like Duo Fiber where you can really blend without placing too much product, you know, you're not going to have a problem with this. And I really enjoy these. I had to rein myself in and not buy more shades of this. Coming in at number 11 is my one and only powder ColourPop blush. Comes from the Romance collection they put out around the holidays, and this shade is called Love Story. This was a recommendation from a subscriber of mine, and I am so glad she recommended it. You know, she said she was just obsessed with it. I just think this is really a kind of a unique shade of a peachy blush. It does have a little bit of golden shimmer running throughout it, but nothing that's like stays on the skin, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like one of the sequin eyeshadows from ColourPop in that there's a little bit of glitter on there, but if you tap your brush off, it's not going to go on your face or anything like that. I just think it adds a nice glow to the cheeks, and it is so pretty. This is kind of like everything I wish NARS Orgasm had been, and it just wasn't. So, boom, number 11. Coming in at number 10, I have had this blush forever, and it's one that has made it past declutter after declutter after declutter. Even though I probably only reached for this a handful of times in a year, it is one of my favorite blushes in my collection. Unfortunately, it is discontinued. It is the MAC and Patrick Starrr I'm Not Blushing Powder Blush Duo, and you heard it right, duo, sucker for a duo. And this was kind of like the eye-opening moment when I learned about blush duos. When I saw Patrick launch this on YouTube and I saw that it was like it's not a split pan, but there's 2 shades in there, I was just like, wow, like that is so cool. And so it has like a peachy shade and then a little bit more of like a neutral shade. And then of course you can swirl them together. I do feel like you can see the difference. This is the peachy shade, the brown shade, and then them mixed together. I actually do use this one all 3 ways. I like the peach by itself, I like the more brown shade by itself, as well as the shade it creates when you mix them together. I just really like this, and it's in a beautiful MAC powder blush formula, so love it. I'm going to be keeping this for a long time. I've probably had it like 3 years already, but you know, when it comes to powder cheek products, I'm not quite as weird about like expiration and stuff as I am about eye products or things like that. Number 9 is our first Hourglass blush. I have 3 as singles, and this is the shade Diffused Heat. This is a mini. I did buy this myself, and like I said, this is one that the formula really reminds me of those Essence blushes, but I don't feel like this gets quite as opaque as the Essence blushes right off the bat. But this is a beautiful, nice light pink, beautiful for spring, but I also really like this in the winter. It just gives a nice light rosy flush to the cheeks, and there you go. Number 9. Coming in at number 8 is again one shade of 2 that I have in the same formula. It is the Persona Super Blush. This is the shade Caramel. A beautiful, beautiful pinky mauve shade. Very similar to the MAC blush in Blush Baby. The only difference is this definitely has a luminosity towards it. It's not a shimmer, it's not a sparkle, nothing like that. It's a lot like the one Essence blush that I said it's like a satin texture. That's what this is, because you can see the glow in the blush on the swatch, and that's how this looks on the cheeks. It's absolutely stunning, and I do really like this shade. And then coming in at number 7 is the other shade in the same formula. This is the Persona Super Blush in the shade Georgia. And I really like a good old peachy blush, and this happens to be a fantastic one. It's here on top. Again, you have that beautiful luminosity. It's just a really nice, flattering shade of peach. It's not got too much orange. It's not got too much yellow. It's just soft enough, but it's still pigmented. I just love this, and I love this formula from Persona. I love that luminosity to the cheeks without being anything shimmery that's going to accentuate texture. And these definitely don't do that. I would like to pick up the 3rd shade that Sona Gasparian came out with most recently, which is Terracotta. And I love me a good terracotta sunburny shade. So they'll probably have a sister soon. Coming in at number 6 is another Hourglass Ambient Lighting blush. This one is my only full-size blush, and I bought this shortly before I really got annoyed and mad with Hourglass and their lack of inclusivity, their deceptive marketing pictures, and things like that. And I have since, you know, committed to not purchasing from Hourglass until they start being more inclusive, which is actually a really big deal for me because I love Hourglass, period. But coming in at number 6 is the shade At Night. I believe this came around holiday 2020. I really do love this shade. It's very similar to the blush that is going to come in at number 1. Again, any guesses? But it's beautiful. It looks really dark in the pan, but thankfully with that ambient lighting powder swirled with the pigment, it makes it much more wearable. I just love the glow from this. I love the shade. This is a shade that I can wear any time of year and it's going to look fantastic. It's not gonna look like I'm wearing a fall blush in the spring or anything like that. Coming in at number 5 was a recent product that I received in friend mail, again from my girl Angela from Beauty and Life with Angela. I will link her below. She had sent this to me in hopes that it might dupe one of my Hourglass blushes, and we'll find out momentarily, but this is the Ciate London Marbled Light Blush in the shade Halo. This is so pretty. It's become like an immediate favorite. I love the texture of this blush. It is a very similar texture to the Hourglass blush that she was hoping this one would dupe. I suspect that this one is more pigmented than the Hourglass one because it just looks like it is, and I know I have to build the Hourglass one up quite a bit. But this is a beautiful soft texture. It definitely performs like an Hourglass blush in that it's smooth, it's luminous, and it just looks like you have great skin. And I love this sort of like plummy, almost plummy leaning neutral shade. So thanks, Angela. Coming in at number 4 is the other shade of my Clinique Cheek Pop blush, and this is Fig Pop. Again, another pretty old blush in my collection, like the MAC and Patrick Starrr one. I really enjoy this. This was probably the first blush that sort of grew my love for that sunburny, tan verging, sun-kissed, you know, like the shade your cheeks are after you've had just a titch too much sun, but you're not quite burnt. These days I just burn, but I love this, and I do love this formula. Again, it adds this luminosity to the skin that just looks like healthy skin. There's not a speck of sparkle or anything, or even pearl in this blush, but the formula is so beautiful that it actually looks glossy a little bit. Top 3, baby, here we go. Coming in at number 3, I've had this for quite a while. I've seen so many people pan this blush, and I myself am working on panning it completely this year. It is the Tarte Amazonian Clay blush in the shade Party. And I love this blush. I never expected to love this blush that much, to be honest. I almost gave it away without even trying it because I received it, you know, as a birthday gift or what have you. But it's just my perfect pink blush in terms of powder blush. It just is beautiful. Sometimes it looks peachy, sometimes it looks more pinky, sometimes it looks more nude. It kind of depends on what I pair it with. And I just really enjoy that aspect of it. It layers beautifully over other blush or under other blush. And it's just kind of a staple in my collection. And I know that I will purchase another Tarte blush like this when this one is finished, because I really like and have come to rely on this formula a little bit in terms of longevity and just ease of use, ease of pairing with other products. All right, number 2 is that Hourglass blush that I've been talking about. It is the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Blush in the shade Mood Exposure. One of my favorite blushes of life. Obviously, it's number 2 in my ranking. I have no dome in this little, this is again a mini. I have no dome of product anymore. It's very flattened out. It won't be long, and I will definitely hit pan on this blush. So I do want to swatch this next to the Ciate London blush and just see how close they are. Just for gits and jiggles, and I know Angela also was curious. So, like I said, I will have to build the Hourglass one up a little bit because it's pretty light, and it's also, you know, swirled with that powder. So there is Mood Exposure all by itself. Really pretty. Love, love, love for any time, but especially in the dead of winter when my skin is super pale. Here is the Ciate London one. When my skin is super pale in the winter, I love this sort of plummy, beigey kind of shade. So there they are actually next to each other. I do think they would read super similar on the cheeks, and I might try, you know, one on one cheek and one on the other for gets and shiggles sometimes, but you know, the Mood Exposure one definitely is a little bit more plummy. The Ciate one is a little bit more pink, and you know, other than that, I think they are similar for sure. And also my ambient lighting one is just getting old. The Hourglass, it's definitely getting a little bit more dry to the touch than I recall from years past, but love. One of my first Hourglass products I ever purchased as well. And then before we get into the number one product, I wanted to mention there is one powder blush that is not in this ranking because I've only used it a couple of times. It was a part of the hubby chose a couple of goodies from Sephora, Get Ready With Me. And it is the Charlotte Tilbury Cheek to Chic Swish and Glow Powder Blusher. This is the shade Sex on Fire. Really beautiful. I love these blushes from Charlotte Tilbury. So I was definitely glad to have another one. It looks like hardly nothing. Like these don't swatch for shizzle, but there they are. Very light, but built up on the cheek. It's really pretty, and especially for times of the year where I'm a little bit more pale, I think this is going to be gorgeous. So, did anybody guess the number one? Dun da da da! My other Charlotte Tilbury Swish and Glow Powder Blusher. This is in the shade Pillow Talk, and this is the blush I have on today. Like I said, I have no highlighter on my cheeks because how you're supposed to apply these is you apply the deeper shade around the outside of the pan to your cheeks, and then you go in with the glow part in the center and kind of put that on the top part of your cheekbones. And for me, anywhere else that I put highlighter, like my schnoz and whatnot. And I just love how this just makes my skin look glossy. It doesn't look shimmery. It doesn't accentuate texture or anything like that. This is just one of, well, obviously my number one, but one of my all-time favorite blushes because of how it looks on my skin when I just want a really good skin day and just, you know, super kind of natural. This shade right here, I think is why I like sunburny blushes so much, because when I do flush, this is kind of the natural shade that I flush. So I absolutely adore this. I'm going to swatch it for you. I do typically use this one separate, unlike a lot of other blush duos. I think that I prefer to do it the way I told you, where I apply the actual color to my cheeks and then go over top with the glowy part. But this is what they look like. This is the outer ring, this is the glow in the center ring of the ring, and then this is them mixed together. It works great. I mean, you can absolutely mix them together if you don't want to fuss around layering products or anything like that. But I also just like that the center part can be used as a highlighter for my whole face, and it just, juicy cheeks. Love it! So there you go. My goodness, that was a lot of blush. I see now I've been filming for 45 minutes, so let's hope I can get this edited down in the editing process. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's ranking. Did anybody guess any of my like top 3 or number 1? I'll be curious to hear. And what are your top blushes? Top 3, number 1? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for spending part of your day here with me today in my new background. Sorry, Frank. And yeah, I know time is precious these days. It always is, but especially now. And I just really appreciate you spending part of that precious time here with me today. I always appreciate you guys, and I hope all of your makeup days are absolutely beautiful, blushing makeup days. And I will see you in my next video real soon.